The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquiries of Our Reality with Shayn Jones.
What is up, Inquirers, and welcome to the expanse of deep open-minded conversation. I'm the one they call Shane, as always, and today for you guys, I got a vast variety of topics from a longtime writer who's covered a lot of different paranormal and non-paranormal topics, actually. So this one is kind of a smorgasbord of a lot of just interesting, fascinating stories and research. I think you guys are definitely going to enjoy this show, but before we get into that, of course, the next live Bizarre Inquiries that'll be on the Open Minds Media YouTube is going to be on March 6th, and that'll probably happen around 7:15 p.m. Eastern Central Time. But of course, as we get a bit closer to that date, we will give you guys some more information on the show and through social media, of course. And I mentioned it on the last couple episodes, but I recently cleaned up the merch store a little bit. So if you guys are in the market for some awesome gear for this show or any of your favorite topics and or creatures or conspiracies or anything like that, you guys can pop over there and check that out, of course. And one last thing, if anyone would like to be a guest on the show, or if anyone has had an encounter or experience they would like to share on the show, or possibly even have me investigate, you guys can get a hold of me through email, which is inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com. Or you guys get a hold of me through the hotline. You guys can call or text that, whatever is easier. And that number is 313-364-1551. And every single thing that I mention or will mention throughout the show is all available in the link tree, which is available down in that show description. And with that, let's get into the show. Please welcome to the show, paranormal author Maxim Furek. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Shane. Yeah, and thanks so much for having me on here. And I'm glad that my publisher, Beyond the Fray, was able to go and hook us up. So this is awesome. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. So, I mean, they kind of sent me a list of people and said, oh, you might be interested in some of these people. And actually, when I started looking through that list, you were honestly one of the ones I was the most interested in because you have such a wide variety of different types of topics and books that you talk about. So I kind of figured, we could probably hopefully do multiple shows kind of diving into a variety of your books. But I know today you had a specific book that you want to get into, but I like to kind of lay the framework a little bit before we get into the meat and potatoes of the conversation. So for anybody that may not be familiar with who you are, what you do, and how exactly you got into your work, why don't you kind of let them know a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, okay. So I'm a former psychologist, and I was in charge of a drug and alcohol program. And as a writer, I used to be a rock journalist. So, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I was really sort of fascinated by celebrity self-destruction. And I coined a term called celebrity blood voyeurism. People like Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, so many people that weren't able to go and handle fame. And it actually destroyed them, and it destroyed them through drugs and just like a lot of maladaptive behaviors. And Jim Morrison's a good example. Janis Joplin. I mean, for some of you younger people that listen to the records, you don't know the personalities behind that. Morrison and Joplin would get drunk, go on stage and just act stupid. So these were the rock stars that we looked up to. But Elvis, I mean, there's so many of them just burn out. They flamed out. They flamed out hard. Steven Tyler of Aerosmith said that fame is like 1,000 chickens picking at you at the same time. And, be careful of what you wish for, because should you get fame, should you get that notoriety, man, I mean, it's a tough road, because, let's even say that, Shayn, with one of your podcasts, you get a zillion followers and you're up there and you're on Time Magazine. And let's say that I write a book that hits it out of the park. I'm on the cover of all these magazines and everything. So there we are. We've reached this pinnacle. And then what? That's fame. That's celebrity. That's, how many people actually can top that and go beyond that? I mean, a lot of times it's just one and done. And then you're always trying to get that thing. In addictions, we always talked about that sweet spot, or we talked about, doing a drug and getting that highest high. And then afterwards, you continue to chase that high because you can never reach that point the initial time that you did the drug, just because you've burnt out the neurotransmitters and the whole mechanism. So anyway, but I was a psychologist. I was in charge of a drug and alcohol program. I was very, very knowledgeable about new drugs, emerging drugs like bath salts and synthetic cannabinoids and all of the designer drugs that mimic the hallucinogens like ecstasy, Molly and all the other ones. They promise ecstasy, but what they deliver a lot of times is psychosis. And I'm, by the way, writing an article about Wisner State Forest. Now, this is a place where they have a lot of Bigfoot sightings back in Pennsylvania. But here's the thing. They found this law enforcement guy dead, naked. He died of hypothermia. He had injected himself with bath salts. And bath salts is this hallucinogen that just makes you feel euphoric, but you burn up. And you take off your clothes, and he was walking. It was in the wintertime. This was in eastern Pennsylvania. Same thing happened in western Pennsylvania. 2 law enforcement dudes went out into Allegheny State National Forest, shot themselves up with bath salts just to get high. And again, the same thing. They found them dead, hypothermia. So 2 different places, 2 weird anomalies. So I was pretty much into the music and the drugs, as a researcher. I wrote a book called about the Shepton mine disaster. And what happened was, back home in Pennsylvania, there was a song in 1971 called Timothy. Timothy was about cannibalism in a mine shaft, and it was just a song written to be controversial. So 3 guys go into a mine, only 2 came out. And what happened to Timothy? Well, they ate him. That's what happened to Timothy. Timothy, the song, pretty much paralleled what happened in 1963 at the Shepton mine disaster. And that was 9 years ago. In 2016, I wrote a book called Shepton, The Myth, Miracle, and Music. And it's about the 1963 Shepton mine disaster. 3 guys went down into the tomb, only 2 came out. It was a wonderful story of human survival. It was one of the top stories of 1963 until November and the assassination of John Kennedy, President John Kennedy, 1963. But in Shepton, there were allegations of cannibalism. Instead of celebrating these guys as being heroes and victors, they wanted to know, what happened to your mate? What happened to the other guy? And back then in 63, as today, still till today, there's allegations of cannibalism, that they ate him. So that was okay. You had the allegations of cannibalism, you had the human survival, you had the song Timothy that came later. And then one of the miners was Roman Catholic. He claimed that he saw the vision of Pope John the 23rd in the mine for those 2 weeks. Now, here's the thing, and consider this. Pope John the 23rd died in June of 1963. Shepton took place in August of 63. This was an example of life after death. In all 3 alleged miracles that were attributed to Pope John the 23rd, all 3 happened after he died. And I was at a book signing, and this Roman Catholic nun, picks up the book and she's looking at it, and I'm wondering, what is she thinking? Because that's pretty grotesque, that cover. And I said, sister, listen, did you know that all 3 of the miracles of Pope John the 23rd happened after he had died? And she goes, well, of course. And I said, well, what do you mean, well, of course? She goes, well, he died and he went to heaven, and that's where he got his power, his authority, to work those miracles. And if you're into miracles, whether it's Catholic, Protestant, whatever, I'm sure that all the other religions work the same way. But, Pope John the 23rd wasn't able to go and work miracles. God worked through him, gave him the power to do that. So he was a devout, pious man, and God chose him to do this. And that's how that works. Anybody that works miracles, it's not because of them, it's because they were chosen. So you had cannibalism, you had the rock song Timothy, you had the miracle by Pope John the 23rd. You had the fact that nobody knows about this, but the Shepton rescue technique that they used in 1963, they later used in Chile, the Chilean copper mine disaster of 2010. The 33, there was a movie made out of it. There were two books. And get this, you could laugh about cannibalism. You could say that's just a joke and it's a cartoon and everything else. But these books written about the Chilean copper mine disaster, these 33 guys had rations. They had they had a thimble of milk, they had some crackers, and they had tuna fish. And the people in charge knew that at a certain point, that food was going to kick. There'd be nothing. They thought about the possibility of cannibalism. All of those guys from Chile, the 33, all of them except one. The one dude was from Ecuador. And the way the story went, written in these books, was that in case they had to cannibalize anybody, the guy from Ecuador was going to get it. So luckily they didn't have to do that. But with the Shepton book, they saw humanoid creatures and they saw underground things. They saw relatives, almost like life, near-death experiences, relatives sitting on the stairway, giving them hope. It was just bizarre. There were examples of out-of-body experiences, after-death experiences, and near-death experiences. Shepton is the most bizarre mine disaster ever. We are working. I have met a New York City film director, and her next project is going to be the Shepton mythology. We'll be working on that after March. And in March, she did a documentary on Dr. Frederick Santee, who was a white witch. And that's going to be in March on Oculus Alchemy, which is her program. This is Dr. Frederick Santee. He was a friend of mine. He was a white witch, youngest guy to graduate from Harvard. He knew Sybil Leek. Sybil Leek came to northeastern Pennsylvania with her son Julian and her publicist. And Sybil Leek, the world's greatest witch, the world's most famous witch, initiated Dr. Santee's coven. But the thing about Sybil Leek and witchcraft, Sybil Leek was our publicist. After Great Britain repealed the Witch Act of 1953 or whatever it was, Sybil Leek wrote a book about how to be a witch. And she claimed that she was a druid. She wasn't just a common witch. She was one of the priest class. But anyway, she was great in marketing herself. And Sybil Leek single-handedly told the world that it was okay to be a witch, to practice Wiccan, to be a pagan, to be something other than Christian, Jew, Islam, or Buddhist. She said it's okay. She opened up the door. So anyway, Sybil Leek was the one who initiated the coven of Dr. Frederick Santee. Long story short, I was invited to do a presentation on Dr. Santee. This woman from New York City came up to me, handed me her card. I swear it was like a Hollywood movie. She goes, I'd like to do something about Dr. Santee. 2 months later, she comes with her film crew and did the shoot. I picked the locations and the people. I get like a little title, like executive, I don't know what, something.
Executive producer.
Yeah, something, I don't know. Doesn't matter, But anyway, that's going to be on Oculus Alchemy in March, and it's going to be about Dr. Santee. So again, I don't know how to see it, how to get it, but it's Oculus Alchemy. And then after that, Samantha Collins is going to be sinking her teeth into the Shepton mythology, and we're hoping to have a kick-ass documentary that we could take around to the different film festivals. And the last thing I told Samantha was, I said, you know what, I'll buy you dinner at Sundance. So, so that's a running joke. But a lot of the stuff is being at the right place at the right time and meeting people who walk the talk. There's too many people that talk the talk, but when you meet somebody who can walk the talk, somebody who's for real, that's pretty impressive. So anyway, that's the Shepton book. That was 9 years ago. That was 2016.
Hold on tight, everyone. Inquiries of Our Reality will be right back after this brief commercial break. But if you don't mind taking a second to follow Inquiries of Our Reality on Instagram and Facebook, and Open Minds Media on YouTube and TikTok, I'd greatly appreciate it. And feel free to spark up a conversation. I love getting to know you guys. And now back to the show.
I did not go looking for the paranormal. I'm a rock journalist, and the paranormal found me, stalked me, hit me over the head. And since then, 9 years, I've been doing this for 9 years, but I've had 5 books published on the paranormal, and found an audience. I've been on a ton of podcasts. I mean, I don't know how I sound, how it goes over, whatever, but man, I mean, I'm either making a major fool out of myself, or I'm just, or I'm honing my skills. But I've been doing podcasts left and right, and but this is the age of the podcast. I mean, what a wonderful thing that guys like you do, Shayn. I mean, this is great. This opens it up for everybody. This gives a guy like me a chance, to go and talk about my research and have people, hundreds, thousands, maybe millions of people listening to it and saying, hey, I like what this guy has to say. I think I'm going to go and buy one of his books, something like that. So, it opens up the marketplace, it opens up the doors, and it's not just relegated to the rich people, so us folks too. I don't know about you. I mean, I don't know if you're back there counting your millions. But,
oh, definitely not. No, but I agree with you. It's one of those things that, there's a lot of people that are going back to reading now after kind of having a period where a lot of people weren't reading that much. And I feel like it's also connecting because of documentaries, because of podcasts. It's making it now so that it's not just a book with a name on the cover. People can kind of see the personality behind the writer, behind the researcher, and kind of see what exactly they're all about. And I think that's kind of what it comes down to, is that like with podcasts, it just gives you a more authentic feel for like who you're about to kind of get into the research for. Because when you just read a book, it's like you can kind of have an idea of the expressions that people mean, but after you kind of hear how they talk, then you read their text a totally different way because you understand like how they talk. So I mean, honestly, I think you sound great on podcasts. It's one of those things that like researchers, they have so much information that it's like they go in a million different directions. There's a bunch of different cylinders firing. So I know you covered a lot of stuff just in that quick intro, but that's exactly the type of stuff I like as far as podcasts go. It's like a big info dump from somebody that has just a bunch of information and that's all ready to be shared.
Well, it happened fast. It happened in 2016. And when the Shepton book came out, all of a sudden, I'm invited on podcasts. I mean, they had podcasts back then, back 9 years ago, and invited to expos. And the Mysterious Universe, the Australian podcast, which is pretty big, did a 90-minute segment on me and the book. And Skeptical Inquirer, did a really big piece, which was fine. I mean, they ripped it up at the end, of course, but what they said, and let me share this with you, Skeptical Inquirer goes after these paranormal things and tries to go and debunk them. And the miners saw humanoid creatures. They saw the vision of Pope John the 23rd. They saw ancestors. They had an out-of-body experience. A lot of weird things happened. Skeptical Inquirer, and I believe that there was something of a spiritual nature that happened. Skeptical Inquirer said, no, you have to go to Occam's razor, which is a medieval judgment. And what happens in like very complicated cases, you look at the explanation that is the most simplistic, and that would be that the miners were hallucinating. Well, let me counter by saying this. When you talk about things of the supernatural and the paranormal, there's nothing simplistic about it. It's complex. It goes beyond the scientific. It may be part of the scientific.
Eventually. It's one of those things that with more understanding, like I say it all the time on the show, like alchemy eventually became chemistry. You know, I feel like a lot of like the occult mind control became psychology. It's just a matter of, it's like needs to be rediscovered and renamed, and then it will be an official science.
Exactly. And Dr. Santee, the white witch, the wonderful mind, the brilliant mind, one of the foremost leading thinkers of the 20th century. But Dr. Santee told me he believed that the supernatural and the science are very closely aligned. He believed that they were the same. And he said that. So
I think astrophysics are starting to fall into that line where it's starting to be like our start to getting into like a science behind the paranormal. Like I feel like astrophysics, talking about multiple realities, different dimensions, that's our connecting piece that hopefully will eventually kind of get more into the paranormal.
Yeah. Now, the way that fits into the world of cryptozoology and Bigfoot, you know, you have a whole lot of different camps. You have the scientific community that looks down on us like we're all a bunch of fools. You know, we're just like zealots. We don't know what we're doing, talking about. You have the Sasquatchers that go out into the woods looking for Sasquatch and hearing the knocks and all the other stuff. And I consider myself more of an academic. I'm more of a scientist, and I believe in the interdimensional theory. I think that not only Bigfoot, but UFOs shape-shift in between parallel universes or dimensions. That's why you see them and why you don't. There was a famous a paranormal person. She was with Fate magazine for the longest time, but Rosemary Ellen Guiley talked about rapid transport or bilocation. And she talked about how Bigfoot you would see them in front of you, then to be behind you, this rapid transport, that they could transform from the material and the tangible to something that was intangible. And what she said was the same thing that in British Columbia, the coastal tribes said the same thing, that Bigfoot, to see Bigfoot was an honor. It was a spiritual thing, that Bigfoot honored the environment, that Bigfoot could transpose itself into trees and rocks and things. So, so when we first discovered Bigfoot, when the word first came out into the Humboldt Times in 1958 in Northern California, and we thought, wow, this is big. This was California's abominable snowman. But these people from British Columbia said, wait a second, we've been talking about Sasquatch, your Bigfoot, for thousands of years. Native peoples there, totem poles, the spoken word and songs and all that. So Sasquatch has been around for the longest time, and we're just catching up to that. So, but the whole history of Bigfoot, it started in the Himalayas with the abominable snowman. They called it Yeti. Russia had their Almas. Australia had their Zowie, and then all of a sudden we have what we called was the California abominable snowman. And back in the day, there were a lot of people who were trying to track it down and make sense of it. And these were the four horsemen of Sasquatchery. And I dedicate my book to Peter Byrne, John Green, Grover Krantz, and Rene Dahinden. And Peter Byrne was an interesting dude because Tom Swift, a multimillionaire, maybe a billionaire from Texas, oil man, brought Peter Byrne here to the United States. He was an Irish hunter, and he sent him over. Tom Swift sent Byrne over to the Himalayas to look for Yeti, and then he sent him to the Pacific Northwest. And there was a motion picture, the story of Tom Swift, starring Nicolas Cage, that they were making, and then they put that on hold. But to tell that story, that collaboration between Tom Swift, the millionaire. And Peter Byrne would have been a most amazing thing because Tom Swift had the money to fund operations like this. So, this has happened before. The Russians had a expedition back, I believe, in the 60s. They spent $2 million, which is a lot of money back then. But they took Bigfoot, they took the abominable snowman more seriously than we did, than did scientists in the United States.
They still do. Even at their colleges and universities, they actually still teach classes on, like, basically discovering Sasquatch. Like, they take it seriously to a whole other level over there in Russia. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And they had a term called hominology, which they believed that there was something out there that we couldn't identify, an unidentified species that might have been what they called the missing link between, I don't know, that maybe the ape and Bigfoot. So I don't like to use the word missing link, but anyway, hominology was what they came up with. The Russians really were pretty much involved in this and took it more seriously than we did. No, so that was over in Russia. Over here, though, people, scientists, part of zoology was cryptozoology, the study of animals that a lot of scientists don't believe exist because we don't have proof of Loch Ness Monster or Champ or Mothman or this abominable snowman or Bigfoot or any of those things, but you have countless witnesses. I spend summers I'm a snowbird. I spend summers in Pennsylvania and where it's snowing right now, and I spend winters in Florida where it was in the 80s today, but we have our swamp ape down here, and it's amazing the people that see them. And where I live in Citrus County, I'm really close to Sumter and Lake County. I'm close to the Green Swamp. It's 110,000 acres. It's on Lake and Sumter and Polk counties. We're close to the Ocala National Forest. That's 607 square miles. We're not far from the Everglades, 16 counties in southern Florida, from Miami-Dade all the way up to Polk. So there's sightings all over the place. I mean, the big one was in Sarasota. They talk about the Mayaka skunk ape. That was in 2000. This is interesting. Actual photographs. There was an elderly couple that had porch cameras, and they captured this thing that looked like an orangutan. So Loren Coleman and Jeff Meldrum are probably the most infamous academic cryptozoologist out there. They have good credentials. But Loren Coleman went there and thought it might have been either an orangutan or some sort of creature that resembled an orangutan. And when we look at all these possibilities, I mean, what could Bigfoot possibly be? So, you have people say, well, it could be Neanderthal. That Neanderthal never really went away. Or it could be Gigantopithecus that came across on the Bering Strait when that was connected, came from Asia and went to the Pacific Northwest. And Gigantopithecus looked like an orangutan. And Gigantopithecus died out because they were and this is pretty interesting. My wife and I were watching Dino Birds on PBS the other day, and it's how birds evolved from dinosaurs. And when they had the Ice Age, when they had the big meteorite or asteroid that hit the Yucatan Peninsula, and it killed off all of the non-avian dinosaurs. All the big dinosaurs died. There was Earth was covered by like a black thing. There was no sun. Everything died out except the tiny birds, and they evolved from dinosaurs. Birds evolved from dinosaurs. Write that down, people, in case you didn't know that. But anyway, the small birds lived. The bigger birds couldn't survive because there was no food, for them. That's why the smaller ones lived. Same thing with Gigantopithecus. Gigantopithecus was huge. It was like 12 foot, humongous creature. There has always been climate change. I mean, we're getting more of it now because of the, the fossil fuels that we're burning and how we're polluting the planet. So it's happening faster, but it happened throughout history that you would have ice ages and floods and all this other stuff. But with Gigantopithecus, there came a time when there was global warming, there was changes, and all of the succulent fruit was up there in the trees. Gigantopithecus was too big to climb the trees to get the nutritious fruit. So Giganto would be eating grass and acorns and all the branches that were at the bottom that really couldn't sustain this huge creature. And eventually Gigantopithecus died because of its size, because it was so massive. But again, there's people like Jeff Meldrum that believes Giganto holds the key, that Giganto may still be out there. So anyway, we have theories, and that's good. What we need in our field in the paranormal, we need more theories. And what I do is I throw out what I believe, and you take a look at it and say, well, maybe, or I agree with it, or I don't. And with me, my theory with the lost tribes of Bigfoot, that I wanted to talk about this a little bit. There's me, Shayn, as a rock journalist. That's in Greenwich Village. If you saw the new Bob Dylan movie, A Complete Unknown, that's where he was hanging out in Greenwich Village. But I used to do that too. But anyway.
Got the Jimi Hendrix behind you in the picture too.
Yeah, from Seattle, yeah.
Hold that thought. We'll be back in a flash. But if you don't like hearing the ads, then I have a solution for you. You can get ad-free and early access to this show and Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin on the Open Minds Media Patreon for just $1 a month. That's less than a bag of chips, and it's a great way to support the show and all the hard work behind it. And if you're interested in merch store discounts, live access to episodes, or premium video versions of episodes, then there are a few other tiers with additional benefits with 7-day free trials available. And we are back, so let's hop right in.
So, but anyway, what was the point? I was trying to make a point here. I lost my train of thought.
Oh, you're saying that everybody was putting out theories and everything, and
yeah. So yeah, thank you. So my theory was that I believe that that Bigfoot and UFOs are interdimensional. But here's the thing: I believe that Bigfoot has some type of higher vibration. That they exist, but they have a higher vibration. And some of us human beings, not all of us, some of us have also evolved, have a higher level of consciousness and vibration. And those are the people that actually see Bigfoot. These, not the people that claim to see Bigfoot, but the ones that are for real, that see Bigfoot, and maybe even converse with them. So I think that's how that works. I think it's a similar situation with aliens. I think aliens walk among us, but I think that they have a higher vibration, and some of us, but not all of us, can go and see them, talk with them, interact with them, learn from them. So that's the best theory. Other than that, why would the alien brothers come here? I mean, what can they learn from us? We are so self-destructive. We're destroying this planet, as we speak. I mean, polluting the planet. I mean, even the beautiful Himalayas, where they went up there to see the abominable snowman. It's like a toilet. It's like a cesspool. It's the biggest garbage dump going, because all these rich tourists from the United States and Europe and Asia and India go over there and spend their money and pollute, the sacred mountain. So. That's just a horrible thing. But I think like Tesla said, the answers lie in frequency and vibrations. And if you can learn those mysteries, you could learn the mysteries of the universe. So again, I don't know what they are. That's just the best theory I found. To consider that Bigfoot is flesh and blood, to consider that flying saucer is nuts and bolts makes no sense to me. The interdimensional theory makes sense. To conceive that a spaceship would go trillions of light years from planet Alpha to Earth would take too long. Nobody has that kind of propulsion. With Einstein's theory of relativity, the faster you go, the more time slows down. And so, the guys that go to Mars and come back, I mean, they're a young man and their wife has aged 50 years. So, you've seen plenty of, movies, Twilight Zone and, movies
Interstellar.
about that.
Interstellar is that's like the whole concept behind that movie.
Yeah. So time slows the faster you go. So anyway, but this was Einstein. Einstein said that you take the space-time continuum, fold it in half, and there's bridges or wormholes, and you could just go through that wormhole, and you could be there from A to B just like that. Yeah. Doesn't have to take trillions of light years. With the space-time continuum, you're right there. So a lot of us, put together, a lot of the new researchers, they put together new theories. And I think a lot of these guys don't know the old theories. I mean, they haven't figured out Einstein and Tesla and some of the theories that are already there for us to take a look at and try to explain. So I think that, what's exciting about our field is that guys like you, me and you, try to come up with terms, vocabulary. What's interesting with the connection between Bigfoot and UFOs or UAPs. I still use the word UFOs, but
yeah, it'll always be UFOs in my book. UAP is just them trying to rebrand and remarket it so the government isn't sitting here talking about UFOs and having a totally different connotation with it.
Yeah, they're trying to mess us up, trying to bamboozle us. That's what it is. But 1947, Kenneth Arnold sold those 9 discs near Mount Rainier, and the reporter mistakenly called them flying saucers rather than flying discs, because every time Arnold talked about them, he would have this little crescent-shaped disc. That's what they looked like. They were crescent-shaped. So we got the shape and the name wrong. But they called, since in 1947, they were called flying saucers. And then 1958, that's when the Humboldt Times first printed the word Bigfoot. And they talked as Northern California had their own abominable snowman, and they called them Bigfoot. And when the Humboldt Times wrote that article back in 58, they received thousands of letters, people that believed the abominable snowman exists in California and had seen something that they started to call Bigfoot. That, again, right after that, the people from British Columbia checked in and say, wait a second, you're missing something here. We've been seeing this guy for thousands of years. So
the Nantinaq, that's what they call it up there. I remember having somebody on from up in that area. They call it the Nantinaq.
Okay. So that's been going around for a while. And then the other thing, too, is with the connection between Bigfoot and ufology, 1967, we had the Patterson-Gimlin film. And that's when Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin were riding in Northern California. And they had a camera there. They were going to make a documentary, make money, and then to fund an expedition to look for Bigfoot. That was the plan. So anyway, Roger Patterson was in the front. Bob Gimlin was in the back with a horse and a pack horse. They go around the bend and they see a Bigfoot. It was a female Bigfoot. They later called it Patty, had breasts, and the horses buckled. They bolted. Patterson grabbed the camera and he's shooting, and he falls down as he's shooting. And he didn't think he got much of anything. And when they had the film transposed, when they had it processed, here they only had 58 seconds of video, but it showed Patty, the Bigfoot, looking at Patterson and then walking away. They made cast of the tracks. They measured the stride. It was bigger and had a longer stride than any human or any bear. It was something else. It was a Bigfoot. Now, was it the interesting thing that from the 1967 Patterson-Gimlin film, the equivalent is the 2004 Tic Tac video that the Navy pilot shot off of San Diego, and they saw something that was maneuvering. The G-force was so fast that humans couldn't withstand it. It was just too sharp, and it hovered. Now, the Pentagon at the time had changed the nomenclature from UFO to UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon. But this thing in 2004 hovered, and then it went under the water. And then they called it, the Pentagon they started to call these things unidentified anomalous phenomenon. So the terms kept on changing. But the Patterson-Gimlin film and the 2004 Navy pilot film are the ones that we look at as being the holy grail. They're pretty much authentic. They haven't been able to be disputed. With the 2004 UFO video, we don't know what it is. I mean, it's one of the 3% of the things that we see that remain anomalous. We don't know what they are. No, we don't think it's ours or theirs. It has to be either extraterrestrial or, I believe, interdimensional. The other thing, too, about that Patterson-Gimlin film, there was a guy named John Napier. He was a British primatologist, and he was in charge of the Smithsonian Institute. He had a chance to take a look at that Patterson-Gimlin film in 1972. There were a bunch of Russian scientists there because, they were into this thing. And Napier said, no, I don't believe it's real. I think it's a hoax. And he thought it was a hoax because Patty had a upper body like an ape, strong, elongated muscles, and it had a body, lower body like a hominid, walking on 2 feet. And so that was in 1972. In 1974, researchers were over in Ethiopia, and they discovered Lucy. That was Australopithecus. That was 1974. They named this creature, this relic, man's oldest ancestor, named it after Lucy and Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. So the guys got drunk and played Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds all night. But when John Napier heard about this, he said, wait a second. He changed his mind. He said, wait a second. Lucy is like that. Lucy has the upper body like an ape and the bottom part like a hominid, like a human. It walks. It's bipedal. So John Napier, after 2 years, changed his tune. He, too, believed that Patterson-Gimlin film was authentic. And he's another one. It was just amazing how many people have looked at it. It's probably been the most scrutinized piece of video we've ever seen, maybe in history. I'm not sure, but it's everybody talks about it, and it's only 58 seconds. You would think that if these guys were actually going to hoax us, that they might have given us 3 minutes or 5 minutes, but
it's been 80 years and they still haven't fully disproved it. I mean, I'm on the camp that I think it's fully legitimate film, but 80 years and still nobody's had in any type of anything to say any questionable doubt about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and they dress up guys in monkey suits and they have them emulate that stride, and they really can't. So it walks like an ape, like an animal, like a Bigfoot. So
I mean, even going back into like Hollywood back then, they didn't even have costumes that were that authentic in like mainstream Hollywood. So how would two guys that were just had a film camera able to reproduce this costume for people who have tried to create that theory, or say it was somebody in a costume walking that way? Like it wouldn't have been possible at the time. You can't create something like that.
The other thing too, if it was a hoax, and there's a bunch of people that came forward and said that, I was like Bob Harmonious, I believe his name was. He claimed that he was wearing the monkey suit and everything, but nobody was ever to come up with a receipt, a box, a costume, anything. I mean, man, they could have had movies made about them, busting this hoax, but they never came forward because they had nothing. So our world of cryptozoology, and I have 3 chapters in The Lost Tribes of Bigfoot that talks about the hoaxers, people like the Piltdown Man. There was a British lawyer, he was a fossil collector, Charles Dawson, and he claimed that he found this relic And what happened was in Germany, and this was all for national pride, but in Germany they had the Heidelberg man, which was the oldest known ancestor of man. And Charles Dawson said, no, we have ours here in Great Britain. Ours is older. But what it was a hoax. He took a jaw of an ancient man. It was thousands of years old. It was that skull, and he took the jaw of an orangutan. He sharpened the teeth to make him look human-like. He peppered the skulls with iron oxide, and that's what he did. That was the scam. But it lasted 40 years. People believed Charles Dawson because they wanted to have their own Piltdown man. They wanted to have their own early man that had a bigger brain. They wanted to do it for national pride. So there were a lot of politicians and scientists that turned their head another way just for that honor, that national pride. But 40 years of that before finally Dawson was called out for being a hoaxer. But I talk about that extensively in The Lost Tribes of Bigfoot. I talk about the Minnesota Iceman, another one, and even Ivan T. Sanderson and Bernard Helvemans, the cryptozoologist, the father of cryptozoology. They were conned by this Minnesota Iceman. They thought it was the real thing. So, throughout history, there's been con artists and people doing it for all the reasons, money, 50 minutes of fame. They are little people that haven't accomplished anything, so they lie about what they've seen or done, and it causes disrepute to our genre. And I claim they've sold their souls. They've sold their souls to the devil, and they're just like bad people. They're bad for the paranormal. They're bad for cryptozoology, and
they're not forwarding the true research. They're just trying to get famous off of it, not realizing that nobody really gets famous off this. It's about the progression of the research as a whole, not like the individual.
Yeah.
Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back with that deep conversation you crave. But just a quick reminder, if you'd like to snag some gear for this show, Bizarre Encounters, or your favorite creature or topic, hop on over to the Open Minds Media merch store for a wide range of designs with new drops regularly. Welcome back to the show. Now let's dive right in.
And even with the Patterson-Gimlin film, when people say, hey, they made millions of dollars from that. Well, here's the thing. Patterson's wife owns the rights to the video, and then Renee Dehandran's family owns the rights to the photographic rights, and everybody is using those pictures and the video. I mean, nobody's getting paid for it, or nobody's paying for it. It's almost like common
public domain at this point.
Almost like public domain. So Patterson and Dehandran and all those people that have the rights. I mean, they've signed documents and everything, but that doesn't mean anything. So it's too bad. But again, nobody's making any money. With guys like me, I sell books. I sell a book or two, and then I get invited to expos where I get to be a guest speaker, and that's just a lot of fun. I mean, it's about the journey. It's about nobody knows what the destination is. Nobody knows how it's going to end, but it's all about the journey. It's about meeting interesting people like you, meeting people that'll contact me through my website and say, I enjoyed your presentation. And, we develop a relationship and all that. So that's the nice part. I mean, meeting like-minded people who believe in this, and I just think it's just great. It's just such a fascinating topic that we dabble in, and I agree with you, Shayn. I think that it's part of the scientific realm. I mean, just we haven't figured out exactly, but I believe that it is.
And say it's just a matter of, again, just more understanding and actually having somewhat of like a backing to it. But I think that there's just so much involved with this at this point that either one, you got all the hoaxers out there that muddy the waters when it comes to the UFO stuff, whether it's coming from government or it's coming from other places, they muddy the waters on that stuff. And I definitely think, at least for like the UFO phenomenon, it's definitely a double-sided thing where there are crafts that are being manned by the government, and in turn there also are these crafts that are being manned by something that's unknown, but they kind of just purposely blend them together because nobody wants to be like, oh yeah, that's our aircraft, and then other governments are fully aware of what they have. So I'm kind of curious what the progression is currently with it, that I feel like a lot of the stuff that people are seeing might actually be advanced technology, and they're just kind of masquerading it under the whole term of like UFO. But it seems like now the people that have contact, they go through all these experiences, they go through abduction experiences. What they're describing is a little bit different than like what the government's trying to give off, which is why I definitely think that there's like a good split in it. But even like with them kind of changing the name, like UFO versus like UAP, I mean, sometimes it kind of fits in better, sometimes it doesn't, but it seems like more recently there's a lot more people that are seeing like the orbs when it comes to this type of stuff, which kind of connects into what you're saying with the whole like interdimensional concept that, as we progress as a society, you got to assume that wherever these things are coming from, they've progressed as a society. So their technology is going to get way more advanced. And everybody kind of knows the whole concept of like singularity, that as technology speeds up, it keeps going faster and faster and faster. So if these things already had advanced technology way past what we had, what we can do in 5 years, they could probably do within like a week. So you just kind of got to bring that progression in. And I feel like that's kind of where the phenomenon's kind of going now, is that we're looking at something that's significantly way more advanced and speeding up way more advanced past us. So it's almost like you almost do have to kind of shift the goalpost a little bit, because the phenomenon is kind of morphing and changing into something a little bit different. And it's almost like becoming more prevalent, that more people are paying attention to it. But at the other side, it's also becoming almost unreachable at a certain point, because it seems like these things are almost becoming more like quantum, or more like spiritual almost, I guess, for a lack of better terms for it. But even like kind of we were talking about earlier with different sciences and everything, I feel like spirituality is almost like the magic term for another science that's currently evolving and doesn't specifically have like a name yet. But when we have more understanding behind it, then we'll understand how this like transference of energy and vibration works a little bit better. But we're chiseling away at the wall of that right now, because it's been like the past a couple of years that everybody's just really, really heavy into the vibration and frequency concept. And I think it's because it's honestly getting somewhere. It is a good ground point to really get into the in-depth scientific research space behind this stuff.
Yeah. I wrote down two little notes here. I wanted to, so I don't forget what I'm talking about, but a couple of things. But my ideas, my attitudes keep on changing. My philosophies keep on changing. But I want to say that the government claims that they want transparency, they want full disclosure. And in 2003, July of 2003, they had the congressional hearings. They had David Grush, former military intelligence, that says that he knows where the bodies are and he knows where the vehicles are. And in the right circumstances, he would go and share that information. And then in 2004, they did it again, and they invited Luis Elizondo, another former military guy. Again, Luis claims that the government knows where these things are. So we're close to the goalpost, but as you say, they keep on moving it. We get really close, but then they move it. Now, what I did was, and I had a list of all these people that I had contacted from, and it's here. Well, whatever, I could remember. But anyway, one was our current Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. I'm down here in Florida. I wrote him a letter. He was with the committee. And I wrote to Chuck Schumer. There were 5 people on the UFO committee that I wrote to, and I said, let's let David Grush show his cards. He says he knows where they are, the crafts and the bodies. Make him show his cards and tell us what he knows. And the only one who responded was Marco Rubio. And then I was going to continue this correspondence with him, but now he's out of the UFO game, and he's now Secretary of State. So so he's doing other things. But I'm going to continue to write letters. I would encourage all of your listeners to do the same thing. We have this power. You can write letters to your representatives and say, listen, we are demanding transparency. What does the government know about crashed vehicles and about retrofitting and reverse engineering and all that? What do we know? I mean, you talk a good talk. You talk a good talk, but you don't. But you're not showing us anything. We want full disclosure. So, what is it that the government knows? What's happening in Roswell? Tell us the truth. A good example is back home in Pennsylvania. We had the Kecksburg crash of 1965. It's our Pennsylvania Roswell. Same thing. What happened was this thing goes down. They don't know if it's ours or a Russian thing, or maybe even a UFO. Nobody knows. But the military comes in at the dead of night. They blockade the thing. They chase people away. They tell people to keep their mouth shut. You didn't see anything. And then they cart this acorn-shaped thing away under tarps in the night, allegedly to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. When the Western Pennsylvania researchers, through the Freedom of Information Act, ask for information, the information they get is either redacted, that is, somebody took a black pen and scribbled out all the important stuff, or it was missing, it was lost. So, what happened in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania in 1965? What was so important about this that the government can't share that information with us? We had the same thing with Roswell, that they said that it was a weather balloon. It was a Project Mogul, that they were trying to determine if the Soviets were conducting underground nuclear testing. But they keep on changing, making excuses, and we're having a hard time getting to the truth of the matter because, like you said, they're moving the goalpost. It's not fair. And they keep on changing the names too. So, whether it's, UFO or UAP, but all of these different organizations that are now tasked for tracking UFOs. So they have this. I think the truth is going to be revealed by one of your viewers who's into the finance and the business, and they'll be able to go and track where that black ops money is going, with the Department of Defense, to see which entity is getting this. And it's not the CIA or the FBI, but it's somebody else that we don't even know about. And they're getting huge bunches of money to study remote viewing and, mind control and,
That's one of those things too, where that's like, as soon as people start figuring out about the name of the operation, then they shut down that operation, open up a new operation, and then they just close the doors behind them. And same with like releasing information. It's one of those things where as soon as they move into somewhere new, they close the door behind them. It's almost like trying to navigate like the dark web. Like they purposely don't leave like a paper trail for a lot of this stuff. And as soon as you start getting close to it, like the whole thing with releasing the JFK documents, like I don't think that's ever going to get fully released. Same with a lot of this UFO stuff, because they're going to slap terms on it like, oh, it's an issue of national security. Oh, it's an issue of this. Oh, we can't disclose this information because, it's going to have an effect on, this other country knowing more information than they need to know if it's in the public. Like, no matter what, it's going to be one of those things where there's always going to be an excuse that they're able to slap on it at that very last second. They're going to let people ride it all the way up to the end, and then they're going to go national security, and nobody's going to see anything, and it's always going to stay hidden.
Yeah. Well, a couple years ago, we went to Dealey Plaza in Dallas, and we checked out where Kennedy was assassinated. And I stood there at that grassy knoll. There's no way that anybody with a gun could stand there and get off shots. It's just too open. That part hasn't changed. The whole part is very open. So, with all the hundreds or thousands of people that were there, gathered there at that Dealey Plaza as Kennedy was making that turn, I don't know. I mean, I think more people were involved. So I don't know. The other thing I wanted to talk about, I was talking about the government congressional hearings of 2003 and 2004, but my thoughts and ideas keep on evolving too. And if there are, and let's just talk about aliens for a second, but if aliens walk among us, why would they be here? What's the takeaway? I mean, what do they want? It's not our vast knowledge. It's not that we're so progressive. I mean, we're destructive. We're like cavemen. But I think that just maybe they're on a higher vibration level, and they connect with those of us who also have a higher vibration level, and maybe they're trying to teach us to be the guides, to be the shamans, whatever. I'm thinking it's a slow process, but just maybe that's why they're here. They're just trying to go and teach us. I can't think of another reason why they would be here, because it's pretty sad what we do. It's sad and this has been happening for thousands of years with the famine, the wars, the disease, the rich and the poor, the disparity. I mean, nothing has changed in the last, there's nothing new under the sun. Nothing's changed in the last 2,000 years.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And we are back to the show. So let's hop right in.
Going with that pessimistic note, I do want to show you my next project, which is the Paranormal Apocalypse. Is this how it ends?
That's a really, really cool cover. Is that a gray in like a Grim Reaper?
Very good. Yeah. That was my idea. Yeah. So it was my idea. There was the gray as a Grim Reaper, and there's the hourglass, and there's all the skull. So what I talk about how fear is the most primal emotion that we have. H.P. Lovecraft said that fear of the unknown is the most powerful emotion known to man. It's probably one of the most profound statements anybody's ever said. But we are ruled through fear, either by politicians or church leaders or doomsday cultists, whatever. But many of us our lives are just wrapped in fear. And a lot of us are waiting for the next tsunami or weather event or war, or get ready for the next pandemic too, because whether it's bird flu or Ebola or another COVID-19 or whatever's happening. I mean, there's some bad stuff on the horizon, like with bird flu, that's real close to mutating from human to human. I don't think it's happened yet. I know that several humans have caught the bird flu from birds, from chickens. But if it starts spreading, our government has withdrawn from the World Health Organization. There is a news blackout. They're not coming out with these regular reports about bird flu or anything else. I mean, there's something going on where the news is being muzzled when we may be, I mean, it's not guaranteed, but we may be staring in the face of another pandemic. So, you make the call whether this is something to be afraid of or not, but it makes no sense at all. World Health Organization, I mean, we work together, we share information on pandemics that are emerging, like monkeypox and Ebola, that's still out there in Africa, and could easily cross the Atlantic and come over to our shores. I mean, that's why COVID-19 spread so fast. But anyway, I'm concerned about that because the flu season that we had right now, the most intense flu season that they've had in 15 years, and it was a combination of a whole lot of things, whether it was COVID or RSV or whatever, but there was a whole lot of viruses, and it's not a 1, 2, or 3 day thing. It's like a 2 week thing. So, God, everybody I know down here was sick. We went down to Key West. Everybody was sick. So that was my vacation in paradise.
Man, when it comes to all that kind of stuff too, I mean, I definitely feel like there's just a lot of working pieces all at play at once. So it's like, you don't necessarily know what's going to hit you until it actually hits you. But I definitely think we're kind of getting to this point where you kind of brought up like H.P. Lovecraft, but also kind of getting into some of like the old writers with like sci-fi and everything. Like, it almost seems like we're getting to that point with science where it's like a matter of should we or shouldn't we do it? And I feel like that's why a lot of this weird stuff is coming up now, is because it's a matter of now we're so far into science that we're tampering with things that we shouldn't be tampering with. And in turn, it's causing these backlashing effects onto the rest of everybody. And I know a lot of people kind of theorized that, you know, COVID may have been potentially like an intended bioweapon. But I mean, I don't even think it may have been even something that was that precise that they were trying to do. But rather, again, they're just tampering with things that they shouldn't have. And something ended up getting out. And if there's all of these different labs everywhere that are messing with these viruses that we've pretty much gotten rid of for the most part, and they're trying to genetically alter them, it's not a matter of like, oh, it's interesting that we can do this with science. There's just certain things that you just should not touch or you just should not do because there's no positive outcome for society with it.
Yeah. There's, I think it's called BCL, Biological Containment Level 4. There's 4 levels, but what they do is they'll take something like, well, let's say it's the COVID-19 thing, that Wuhan virus, okay? They'll take that, they isolate it, and you know you have to wear all the garb and everything. And what they do is they try to figure out what it is, so they could find that genetic code and then make some kind of a virus, you know, to as an antidote to that. So that's what happened. Now, I don't know. I mean, there's just so many conspiracy theories with the Wuhan virus and the fact that China wasn't very transparent about it. So there are a lot of people that thought that maybe it was weaponized and, you know, and all that.
There was something else going on over there regardless, either whether it was they had a totally different virus than us or it was propaganda coming out of China. But like the videos that you saw coming out of there was not the same stuff that was happening in like the US and stuff. So it's like, I don't know, there's layers to that where it was either something more or stronger over there, or it was all intended to be Chinese propaganda, at least for what was coming out of their country, or they're using it as like a means to just usher in more of like this whole idea of like communism over there. But I don't know, there's something weird coming out of the information from China regardless.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, I mean, if a terrorist wanted to go and wreak havoc globally, they don't have to conjure up a new pandemic. They could take something like smallpox that's been eradicated and you know, we don't get inoculations for that anymore because it's been pretty much eradicated. And they could go and just take that smallpox virus, unleash it in Africa or Europe, and man, it's going to spread like crazy and it's going to kill a whole lot of people. So, you know, but we've already been able to eradicate things like smallpox and measles and whooping cough and polio and all this stuff. And, you know, it's kind of frightening because there's a lot of moms that are refusing to have their kids get the measles shots. You know, and we've pretty much eradicated this. Now, what happens if this plague comes back again? You know, because of because of the family's right to choose. Well, you know, I mean, these are viruses. You know, I mean, so again, you have that political conversation going, and you know, you had that during COVID that I have the right not to get the shot. You know, and rather than back in the old days, what it was, if there was a pandemic, you isolate, you contain, you got an inoculation, you stayed by yourself, you quarantined, you did all that stuff until the virus died. And that wasn't happening. So I don't know. I mean, I'm no doctor. I'm just a paranormal author.
I mean, you brought up fear earlier too. So, I mean, that could definitely be another ploy to it. If another government was trying to scare the rest of the world, you know, you could definitely release, not saying that COVID was fake by any means, but just theoretically, if you wanted to instill fear in people, you could always put out propaganda videos from your country of this awful disease, this awful virus, make everybody like quarantine themselves, make everybody under this high fear state. And then from there, I mean, being a psychologist, I'm sure you know like how much the mind can actually affect you physically. So if you're always living in this moment of fear, you're always afraid that you're going to get sick, it's going to start wearing your body down. So you can almost like influence the rest of the world with almost like propaganda of something like this to get people to the point where they're closing everything down, they're shutting everything down, you could totally affect the entire world's economy. You can affect everybody's mental health. You can affect completely everything. And there may not even be a virus in the first place if you know how to run propaganda campaigns properly, because, especially if you're a closed country that doesn't release much information anyways, and then all of a sudden these crazy videos are coming out and you're doing it through the means of people putting out videos on TikTok, through social media, through these more grassroots opportunities. I mean, that kind of stuff hits home a lot harder for a lot of people. So you could do a lot of damage with that information without even having to stir up a real virus.
And look at what COVID did, how that wreaked havoc. I mean, we were going back to Pennsylvania in 2020 and we're going up 95. They must have had 40, we were in Florida, 40 Florida state troopers chasing away the people from Jersey and New York that were coming down into Florida. They chased them out of the state. So we saw that. So it was crazy. Nobody knew what to do. I mean, so we're getting our vaccination, we're wearing masks, and then there's people that refuse to do it. So there was a culture war going on. It got nasty. And I don't care what anybody says. COVID killed a lot of people. COVID is still around. COVID-19, it's still killing a lot of people. Spreads fast, and it's like an upper respiratory thing. I mean, it was real. I mean, I don't know where it came from, and I don't know if it was manufactured by, as a weapon, but irregardless, it was real, and people died, and we pretty much didn't know what to do. We were scared, and I know with me, when I was going crazy, I finished a book called Somebody Else's Dream. It was my rock and roll Odyssey thing, and I finished that during 2020, 2021. So that was my therapy, my pandemic project. So just keep busy, and when if it comes around again, I'm going to do the same thing. Just go and find something to do and get busy, and stay healthy. So
I was going to say, not to try to find something positive in something that has affected a lot of people, but there was a lot of great work that came out during that time because of people getting stuck at home. So I'm not wishing for anything bad to happen by any means, but on the positive side, at least there was a lot of really good books and a lot of really good research that came out of the back end of it.
Yes, and also the whole podcast thing exploded. And I mean, some of these podcasters that I had been with before, they're reaching out to me, and then there's new ones. And I mean, as far as, man, again, just a little fish in a big sea. I mean, I can't believe the podcast opportunities that I've been given. And I want to say, I'm just so grateful that, I'm on your show tonight, and I'm hoping that, this is making sense, and this is of interest to your listeners. I mean, we didn't talk we did. We talked about a whole lot of stuff, not just Bigfoot and aliens, but we talked about pandemics and,
Say, it was a good introduction to kind of get into some stuff, because I'd love to have you come back on, considering that you seem to be a plethora of awesome knowledge. So I'm sure that there's a million other directions that we could go into diving into the paranormal and stuff. But at least as far as this one goes, it's always fun on the first one to kind of touch base on a bunch of different places, see what people are interested in, then always come back for a round two and then focus on one particular thing. So
yeah, that'd be great. Shayn, see what kind of feedback you get, and see if anybody has any interest in any of the topics we've touched upon. Then maybe we could go a little bit deeper. But I do want to say this, with the Lost Tribes of Bigfoot, we have a thing called IBT, and this is immersive book technology. And if you take your camera and hit that, that'll open up a QR code, and you'll be able to see a video of me doing a synopsis of that chapter. So that'll be that's kind of a neat thing that the Lost Tribes of Bigfoot has. So please feel free to check that out, as well as Coal Region Hoodoo. And that would be great. So my website is www.maximfurek.com. And if any of your listeners are interested in an autographed copy of any of my books, they could contact me through there, and that would be great. So
absolutely. And I'll include those links down in the show description so everybody can find it quick and easy. Stay tuned, guys. This is our last break. But if you enjoyed the show and think I deserve it, please leave a review or rating for the show on iTunes, Spotify, or any other podcatcher you use. Your continued support is what makes this show possible, and your opinions go a long way to help the show grow and improve. So thank you. Now feel free to skip past these ads so we can get back to the show. Now back with that deep conversation you crave. And before we get out of here, I always love to end the show with some words of wisdom. So if there's any words of wisdom you might want to bestow on the listeners today, what might it be?
Yeah, I'd say, a lot of times when we do these book signings or book presentations, people say they don't read. And I'll tell you what, if you don't read, or if you're not reading as much, consider picking up a book and starting to read. It's the most wonderful thing you can do. It's meditative. It's good for your head. You're filling your head with knowledge, and that's a good thing. That's what we need to do as human beings. We're always learning and trying to find the truth. So I would just say read and learn and have civil discussions and use rational thought, and don't follow the leaders, but do your own critical thinking. And even in the world of the paranormal, go be a critical thinker. Some things make sense and some things don't. You be the judge, but do your homework and do your due diligence, and do that. That's your assignment as a human being. That's your superpower. So you can do that gift of critical thinking. So I would just say my only advice would be, act like a human.
I always tell people you got to be open-minded but a skeptic at the same time, because otherwise every bump in the night is something, or you might have something legitimate and you might think it's absolutely nothing. So you got to find that good middle ground. And as far as reading goes, I'm always telling people reading is definitely where all of the great information is, because you can really dissect and spread out an idea. Even people that are trying to watch a movie version of a book of classic literature, like 1984 is a prime example. 90% of that book is this guy thinking in his head. It's things that you can't necessarily portray in a movie. So even if you've seen the movie for a book, you really don't understand the book because you're not seeing the philosophical aspect behind it. And this generation always wants to go around and say that they don't enjoy reading, but they spend so much time reading texts, reading articles on the internet. You guys are reading. You just need to transfer it to a new medium that's going to be more beneficial to you, because these books, they exist for the purpose of chronicling information at a present time. And if you're trying to use everything through the internet, that information can be changed. It can be altered. But if you have a physical copy of a book, then that's information that can never change. It can never be given away from you. And if we move into some type of dystopian society where some information starts getting repressed, if you have physical copies of books, it's something that can never get taken away from you. So, avoid reading so much text and start, spending your time creating yourself a little library or something, because that's information that you'll always have, and it's information that you'll hopefully be able to pass down to the next generation if it's something that, you deem is worthy to keep around.
Yeah. And I see we both have some pretty nice libraries back there. So,
oh yeah, I've gotten to the point now where I need to get a new shelf, because I have every single little nook and cranny on this shelf completely packed up. So.
Yeah. There's nothing like it there, man. I just love my books, So.
And I got the next generation going good, because my 9-year-old daughter, we end up going to the library every single week, and she leaves with a giant bundle of books. And she's starting to get into reading about folklore. She's starting to get into reading about cryptids, UFOs, all of this type of stuff. So it's again, information that can't be taken away. You got to set a good example for the next generation and get them back into these ideas of becoming somebody that's knowledgeable and full of wisdom, because I talk about this all the time in the show. It seems like as a society, we went from a point where everybody was rising as far as the language was getting more complicated, the writing was getting more complicated, and then there's this period where everything started kind of downgrading back down. If we want to get to this enlightened period where we all ascend to the next level, we all get to see what the next vibration or frequency is, part of that is bringing back our knowledge and our sense of communication. So we need to move back towards being a knowledgeable society full of wisdom, rather than a bunch of people that are acting barbaric and just screaming at somebody that's on the other side.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we need more voices of moderation, and and maybe it starts with podcasts like this. I think maybe it does. At least we're moderates. At least we have those moderate, rational voices. So it starts here and it spreads. So yeah, thank you. You're a good dad and you're a great podcaster. So thanks so much. And again, thanks for having me on. It means a lot to me. I'm really honored to be on your program. And
I really appreciate you making the time to come on. Like I said, you are a plethora of knowledge, and I'm really, really looking forward to next time you come on the show.
Okay, we'll definitely do that. Okay, Shayn, thanks so much. And And those of you out there, thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
If you enjoyed today's conversation and want to show some love, smash that follow icon and share today's episode with a friend. Grassroots support from listeners like you is exactly how this show grows, so thank you. And if anyone would like to get in touch with me for any reason whatsoever, you guys can do so through email, which is inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or through social media. Instagram and Facebook are the two that I'm the most active on. And you can also get a hold of me through the submission form, which is available on the link tree, of course, or you guys can also text or call into the hotline. That number is 313-364-1551, and that, of course, is available down in the show notes to make it quick and easy. And if you have some free time, don't forget to check out the awesome friends of the show, IKNOWSQUATCH, Snarly Out Natural Products, Cryptoteeology, and Big Ape Threads, and our friends with affiliate links, Dimension Devices, Oregon-ite, and Sticker Mule, with additional discounts and credits available. More information on those also is, of course, available down in the show description. And every single thing that I mentioned is all available in the link tree, which, of course, is also available down in that show description. And with that, hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Hope today's show has connected some dots in your own reality, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a good night, everybody.
Reality isn't what it seems. Abductees taking aboard a craft with a tractor beam. Is life a simulation or an astral dream? Aliens travel through black holes in different galaxies. Life is a bizarre odyssey, with a mic talking about philosophy. Well, Bigfoot is stalking campers as a Wendigo walks through the woods of sharpened antlers, using a Ouija board to talk to the dead like a necromancer. There's so many questions and not enough answers. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to Inquiries of Our Reality. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to